up this weekend, it's UFC Fight Night, Santos versus Jamal Hill. An aging legend versus an up-and-coming fighter. Now, there's also a fight at middleweight between a couple of guys that, listen, I just look at it in different ways.
Can we call Sam Alvey an aging legend?
Well, listen, in the Northeast, it's Maine's official soda. It's Moxie soda. Now, Penn Teller, if I'm not mistaken, named one of his kids Moxie. It's a great soda. It tastes like Dr. Pepper and whatever
I think it's
else.
more like Jaeger without the alcohol.
Well, and I'm a big Jaeger Dr. Pepper guy, but that's neither here nor there. It's a weird soda. And this is a weird fight, because if you look at it for Sam Alvey, what are some of the worst runs that we've ever seen in the UFC? Well, Phil Baroni lost 6 fights in a row.
Andre Arlovski lost a lot.
Andre Arlovski lost 5 in a row. Elvis Sinicic lost 6 in a row. BJ Penn lost 7 in a row. Sam Alvey's lost 7 in a row. And there's a draw peppered in there. And there's a fight of the night against Julian Marquez. But the last time that Sam Alvey won a fight, it was to cap, you're not going to believe me, a 7-2 run. He beat Jean Vellante by split decision. And in the 7-2 run, there was one fight where he was the underdog. It was against Marcin Prachnio when Marcin went marching with his hands down like a zombie and got knocked out cold by Sam Alvey. That was the only time he was an underdog. There was a time where Sam Alvey beat Rashad Evans. You believe that?
It wasn't Sugar Rashad, though. It was Rashad who had lost a bunch of fights and moved down to middleweight. But yes, he did beat him.
It did happen. So for Sam Alvey, the losing streak's wild. Under every UFC roster watch tweet where somebody's signed or somebody's cut, Sam Alvey's there with a cigar in his mouth. Sam Alvey's an anomaly.
Here's the thing about Sam Alvey, and just a lot of losing streaks in general, and maybe we have a different opinion on this, we've never talked about this, but this is my theory, and this is how I feel about it. You can lose 3 or 4 fights in a row if you're not taking, life-changing damage in them. If you're losing close split decisions, or let's say you're getting out-wrestled in a lot of fights, then I'm okay with someone losing 3, maybe even 4 fights in a row, and still getting the opportunity, because, okay, maybe some of their other skills are really good. I think of, a Mark Chikasi who had gone on a 3-fight losing streak. Might not be the best guy in the UFC, but still, you don't cut a fighter who's that talented after 3 losses.
I think somebody if Andre Feely lost a bunch, or Alex Caceres, you're going to keep them. They're a litmus test. They're crafty.
That's why I bring up Mark Chikasi, who is that exact example and went through the losses. But with Sam Alvey, he is taking a lot of damage at this stage of his career to where it's not fun anymore, if you will. Not that it was ever fun to watch him lose, but before it was Sam Alvey losing a low-volume contest to where he doesn't throw a lot offensively, but his opponent won't throw a lot offensively because, okay, we both understand Sam Alvey has power, he's sort of basic with his game, so let's be honest, they were resulting in some boring fights along the way. His last few fights, though, have been a little bit different, and that's why I'm kind of surprised that he is still sticking around in the UFC, because think about the Julian Marquez fight. Yes, he's able to hit Julian a couple of times. He gets rocked and almost knocked out on his feet and then choked unconscious. It is getting to the point now where it's not just him losing these close decisions where it's okay, haha, Sam Alvey lost another split decision. He's starting to take big power shots and he's not reacting to them the same way that he used to be able to react to them. And that's why I'm concerned about this matchup against formerly known as Lord Michal Oleksiejczuk, now Hussar.
Hussar, 15th to 16th century, light cavalry.
They had wings on their back. They were cool looking.
Swords and such. But when you look at it for Sam Alvey, 4 of those 7 losses on this streak are by finish, and he's been dropped 5 times. Sam Alvey's known for, he's got the stupid top to bottom mouth guard because he broke his jaw at one point, so it's not really that stupid, but he's always smiling, to getting hit, and then he gets real mad, and it's hey, but this guy's a smiley face shaved into the back of his head, and now it's what, why?
Is Sam Alvey the DeAndre Jordan of the UFC? What are we doing here? Why are we still doing it? The Nuggets went out of their way to make their team worse by putting DeAndre Jordan on it. I don't understand why he's still in the NBA, and I don't understand why Sam Alvey's still in the UFC.
So for Hussar, he's 5-3 in the UFC. Kinda. He's 4-3 in the UFC with a no contest. He tested positive for clomiphene after the Khalil Roundtree fight, so he had to take some time away. It's a no contest. He won a decision. If you look at it, this is one of those rare Southpaw versus Southpaw matchups, so the Spider-Man, what are we doing here? But for Michal Oleksiejczuk, when I look at any of his fights to try and match up to this one, it's probably the fight he had against Shamil Gamzatov, because Gamzatov's a low-volume power puncher. Now, Gamzatov is known as a wrestler if he wins, but against Hussar, he didn't. He struck. And for Sam Alvey, he's a guy who has a propensity to getting backed up against the cage, or at least behind the black line. And I like that from Michal, because he was able to pick his shots. And he's one of those guys that he'll pump the jab out there to then pop to the body, pull back, and then he'll throw his lead hook. And I like those things out of Oleksiejczuk. The one thing I don't like out of Lord Michael, trains out of Ankos MMA, and there's a lot of big-time fighters out of there, like Marcin Wojcik's one of the fighters, Boris Mankowski, Michael Andrazik, like a lot of people that are of KSW lineage, let's face it. But when I do look at it, and now I cheated and accidentally saw the Tapology votes, but when I do look at it for Oleksiejczuk, he doesn't throw a lot of kicks, boxing heavy guy, and the way to beat Lord Michael, and it's easier said than done, it's by volume. And you look at the losses that he has in the UFC, 1 to OSP by submission, listen, that's going to happen. 1 to Jimmy Crute by submission, it's going to happen. The wins, Modestas Bukauskas through volume. Michael was able to back him up and throw bigger shots, so he won. He beat Shamil Gamstad by finish, but Dustin Jacoby beat him because the volume and the forward pressure.
But also, could you imagine what would happen if Sam Alvey fought Dustin Jacoby?
It'd be a lot of ha, and Sam just getting mad.
Sam Alvey would not make it out of the first round, I don't think. Like, Dustin Jacoby is a really good fighter who has great striking. No. He's not?
I have a hard time.
He knocked out Don Like, this is my point. Lord Michael, like you said, struggles with people who throw a lot of volume, or they're dominant wrestlers who can take advantage of his poor wrestling defense. The weird thing about Oleksiejczuk is, he's not a bad offensive wrestler. Like, if you go back to the Khalil Roundtree fight, that's how he beat him. He took him down 100 times and just took all the air out of the cage. So, it is interesting that we haven't necessarily seen that version of Oleksiejczuk since coming to the UFC. But if we just look at these guys, okay, maybe the bare bones of their game are very similar. Neither guy's a lot of volume, they both focus on the power shots. A power shot from Michal Oleksiejczuk at this stage of his career is a lot more valuable than a power shot from Sam Alvey. And like you said, Sam Alvey does have a hard time landing his own power shots at this stage of his career. Other than you walking towards him with grocery bags in your hands, like, I just don't know what Sam Alvey's going to do to open Oleksiejczuk up for his power shots, because Michael does have a very high guard. He does move his head very well from left to right. Sometimes he will move into shots, but I don't think Sam Alvey's the type of guy who can set the traps on the feet necessary to really make Oleksiejczuk zig when he should zag. And, like, Oleksiejczuk's a minus 550 favorite, and I think we all like his fighting style. Like, his fights are fun, but he has obvious strengths and obvious weaknesses. He is not a ranked fighter at all. And the fact that he is almost a 6-1 favorite over Sam Alvey kind of shows you where Alvey is in his career.
Little Nog started off the losing streak for Sam Alvey, and the last one was against Brendan Allen, where he also got finished. Michal Oleksiejczuk open to minus 330, minus 560. For Sam Alvey, open to plus 270, plus 425 or thereabouts. We have a look at the Tapology votes. The mouse slid, so we'll give it to you. 1,000 plus votes. 94% Oleksiejczuk, 20% by decision, 71% by knockout. For the 6% that have Smile and Sam, 57% by decision, 31% by knockout. The UFC is letting him fight out his career. I don't see Smile and Sam win unless Michael walks in and he went to the grocery store that sells cinder blocks for dinner, like Marcin Prakniel bought when he went there. I don't see Oleksiejczuk losing. Again, Oleksiejczuk side to side, not the best. The head movement's all right, but back and forth laterally, he does move pretty well for a middleweight. He is a smaller middleweight. I know he's 6 feet and he's got a
light heavyweight
74-inch reach. He's not a big giant guy, so I'll be interested to see, again, what Lord Michael looks like at 185, because it will be interesting. But if you do look at him over on Instagram, he looks really good physically coming into this one. I think the move down to 185 is going to work out very well for him. Again, guy who's spent the large majority of his career at light heavyweight, so it'll be interesting to see how the younger guy looks at 185. That's the one caveat, excuse me. But for me, I've got Michal Oleksiejczuk in this one.
So do I. Again, Sam Alvey at maybe 205 pounds would have a slightly better chance of winning this because he wouldn't have to cut the additional weight. His chin might be a little bit better, but Oleksiejczuk hits so much harder than Sam Alvey at this stage of his career. He likes to fight in the pocket. Like, there's a lot of red flags if you're a Sam Alvey backer, so I think Oleksiejczuk's going to win this one, and more than likely, probably by stoppage.
Both of us going with Hussar to get the win coming up this weekend. Let us know how you feel about Oleksiejczuk's move to middleweight. It should be a fun one. In the main event, a former middleweight, now light heavyweight, Thiago Santos taking on Jamal Hill. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.